My voice well?
Yes, Nidhi, we can hear you very well.
Namaskar, everyone, and greetings to all of you on the not the day, but on the context of Makar Sankranti. So I'll share a few thoughts with you. My idea again is to share a few things which many of you already know, share a few things that some of you may not know, and some things possibly to make you think. Okay, and hopefully that sets the stage for if there are any questions. So thank you again. So in English, we think of here we use the word holiday, and now in India also the usage of English has grown so much that people use the word holiday. Now where does that come from? That comes from a holy day in the Western context, the Abrahamic religious context. Okay, holy, and that turned into a holiday. Now what we would call it, we would call it a day of a celebration, utsav. Okay, auspicious day, a day in the sense of a punya din or punya divas. And why is such a day a punya divas, a auspicious day? Now, because we are doing this in North America, let me take a quote of someone who is considered the founding fathers of American modern establishment, going back to like say less than 300 years ago, Ben Franklin. And he mentioned that the things are holy, or we consider certain things, certain events holy because they are useful. And I completely agree with that. Okay, now because they are useful, that's why in the tradition, whichever tradition of the word, they turn to be holy in the sense of auspicious, useful, and so on. Okay, and not the other way, which is to say, because somehow somebody defined that it was a holy, and therefore now we have to go and find a use in it. Okay, that's not the idea. Now, the today's theme, I forgot already, but it said something like a yoga for the health or Surya Namaskar for the health and health for humanity. When I read the title, for a minute, I thought somebody meant health, wealth, and humanity. And if that's what they would have meant, that would have been perfectly fine too. In fact, if you look at the entire Sanatan Vedic Dharma tradition, ancient Indian narratives, what you find is that the focus of every single narrative is on the very practical and very pragmatic. And what is the idea? The idea is to have, now, if we use the Western term, sometimes it will be misunderstood. But the idea is to have a blast in our individual life, and have a blast as we work with our family members, in our neighborhood, in our social area, social circles, our region, our state, our country, and of course, the whole world. Okay, so have a blast. Having that feeling of being alive, the rapture of living, feeling that aha, that I am alive. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful evening. Things are going good for me. And they will always not necessarily go good for you, but that optimism is always there. For example, if you take at, say, Rigveda Sukta, you will see at a very higher level, they appear to be simply prayers to higher entities. Okay, for example, Indra, Surya, Agni, and so on. But Rigveda is not very easy to understand. It has many different layers. And what are those different layers? Depending on our ability to synthesize them, we can get different meanings out of it. So, for example, I'm going to quote one Rucha from Rigveda. It is from the 8th Mandal of Rigveda, 44 Sukta. And this is particular Rik or Richa is 16. Om Tvanno Asya Amate Rutakshudho O Abhishaste Ravasprudi Tvanna Uti Tava Chitrayam Diya Shiksha Shachishta Gatuvita. Now, many of us don't understand Rigvedic Sanskrit, including myself. So we can always take help of the experts. Now, if you don't know the meaning, you're thinking whatever it is going on, I have no clue. But essentially what the Rishi is saying to Indra, okay, praying to that entity, is saying, please make all the skills that you have available to us. Become our mentor, become our guide. And for what? To get rid of the amati, kshuddha, abhishastu. Amati meaning the bad thoughts, okay? Aniti also, okay? So we want to build a niti, the absolute moral code, absolute moral fiber. Kshuddha, the basic sustenance of the body, okay? So we need resources. So therefore, I thought the health and wealth also, the wealth is also important. We need resources to sustain ourselves. And abhishastu literally means curse, but it is to be understood as a, in a sense of having a proper health. If we don't feel good, we think, as if something has cursed me or some curse has come upon me. In that sense, the word abhishastu is used. And so they want Indra to share the skills with us, make a beautiful web of these skills that can allow us to get rid of Amatik, Shuddha, and Abhishastu. Very practical, very pragmatic concerns. Those three that I just mentioned, they also go with the Mano, Vak, and Sharir. So mind, intellect, and a body. And each of these have their desires for this Kshuddha, Amati, and being healthy. And please provide us that. And today we did a beautiful set of Surya Namaskar. And actually, Surya Namaskar is very complete Vyam for that reason. It can actually address all of these Mano, Vak, and Kaya. Now, the topic that is given to me is the sun and the ancient astronomy or antiquity of astronomy of the Hindus. Now, what this all has to do, Amatik, Shuddha, Abhishastu, or satisfying, getting rid of these three, and astronomy. Well, it has to do, for example, for the intellect, we need what? We need philosophy, we need tattvajnan, we need darshana. Okay, where do they come from? You'll be amazed how closely all the darshanas, Shad darshanas of an Indian tradition are connected with astronomy. For example, Yogi Patanjali, so sage Patanjali, he says, if you meditate, if you do the yoga dharana on the North Pole, you will have a true knowledge of the movement. How fascinating. And then he says, whatever you gain from this yoga dharana. So yoga dharana or yoga abhyas is not something to be, it's to be done in isolation. But then Patanjali says, whatever the benefit that you accrue because of that skill, there is a sutra in a Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which says all these benefits or all the skills that you acquire are to be used for the well-being of the humanity, which is going back to that Amatik, Shuddha, Abhishastu. Now, Kshuddha, okay, there is a Kshuddha of a mind, Kshuddha of an intellect, and of course the Kshuddha of a stomach. We feel it 3 times a day. Some people feel even it more times a day. If you are on a Dikshit diet, if you know what that is, then you feel twice a day. Okay, and how do we satisfy that? We satisfy it through agriculture. Okay, again, that forms the foundation of any society. No one can ignore it. No politician can ignore the food security, for example. For our health, there is in the Indian tradition the Ayurveda. Okay, and for prosperity, besides agriculture, is what? The craft, the commerce, and therefore the navigation and travel. And that's where the astronomy comes into the picture. Astronomy comes into the picture for a navigation. It comes into the picture for understanding the seasons. It comes into the picture for making of a panchang, a functional calendar, okay, which tells the farmer exactly when to sow the seeds, when to remove the weeds, when to do certain transformation during the agriculture practice, when to harvest, and so on and so forth, when to give nutrition back to the soil. And so this is governed by our knowledge of astronomy, which can get transferred into Panchang, which can get also transferred into astrology. Okay, now, how do we take this knowledge and implement? Because remember, the knowledge is as good as it is implemented for the masses in the actual practice. For example, the Indian calendar is a lunisolar calendar. They perfectly understood the motions of the moon. They perfectly understood motions of the sun. They perfectly understood what needs to be done to synchronize the lunar calendar with the solar calendar and with the seasons. And the reason you want to synchronize lunar calendar with season or with solar calendar is to match the lunar calendar with the seasons. Now, why am I saying this? Because this was something done a very long time ago. And I'm going to tell you some ideas. How long ago was that? Okay. So if you are sitting on the chair, hang on to your chairs. But something else. If you consider the accuracy and precision of the Indian astronomy and therefore Indian Panchang and so on, you will be impressed and flabbergasted, especially if you consider the comparative traditions around the world. The closest that comes in terms of accuracy and precision to Indian calendar is what is known as Babylonian calendar. And let me tell you, the Babylonians and Sumerians are nothing but people who migrated from India to what we call modern day Iraq and Turkey and that area. And there is a sufficient evidence, tons of evidence coming out every day from genetics and anthropology and from agriculture research and so on and so forth. So agriculture got transferred to the Levant, what they call Iraq and Mesopotamia area from India. I'm saying this because many of the younger crowd who might be listening to this, I bet in your textbook, you're going to hear the other way. And that's completely wrong. There is no evidence for it, okay? It's just somebody's concept. But back to the lunisolar calendar. Now, the sun's position, I'm going to come to the Sankranta in case you are wondering. There are sun, as it makes a complete circle around the earth, as seen from the earth, there are 4 key points. They are in English, they are known as cardinal points. Okay, what are they? The day of winter solstice, the day of summer solstice. Okay, so in modern calendar, the Gregorian calendar, 21st December, 21st June, 23rd of March, and 20th of September. Now, this kind of a bit of a awkwardness is due to the awkwardness of a Gregorian calendar, because the famous kings of Greco-Roman world, they wanted a month named after them. And the month that is named after them cannot have smaller number of days. So therefore, August was made 31st, okay? And then the July was made 31st. And poor February, that has to stick with 28. Okay, that's a different story. So we have 4 cardinal points, okay? Summer solstice, winter solstice, spring equinox, which is Vasanta Sampat, and the autumnal equinox, which is Sharada Sampat. And winter solstice is Uttarayan Bindu, and summer solstice is Dakshinayan Bindu. So with that winter solstice, now we come to Sankranti, because don't we celebrate this as a Uttarayan? Okay, so Makar Sankranta, Uttarayan, and it has many other names, but everyone understands the sense that it is the warming period, as somebody described right at the beginning what Makar Sankranti is about. Okay, so now why do we celebrate this? Okay, why do we celebrate this Utsav? Not just Makar Sankranti, but we have many around the world. We celebrate Navratra, we celebrate Vijayadashmi, okay, we celebrate Ugadi, Gudi Padwa, whatever the different names you would have seen, the beginning of the year, and so many others, such as the Ram Navami celebration, Krishna Ashtami celebrations, and many more. Why do we celebrate? But let's talk about the specific Makar Sankranta, but also generally all the other Utsav that we celebrate. One of the reasons for the Utsav, of course, it's individual, it's also social, but I want to tell you about the social aspect of it. In a way, it's a social signaling. Okay, now as soon as you hear social signaling, you think it's a very complex concept. It may be a complex concept. No, it's not. And if you're not thinking it's complex, then you are with me. When you're driving a car and you come at the signal, and what is that? That is a social signaling, okay? For all the cars coming in this one direction, instead of telling guys, please stop, there are other cars there and maybe we should give them a chance to go. Well, there is a social signaling. If the light is turning yellow, try to stop. If you can stop safely, red light, stop completely. Somebody else, it is chance for somebody else. In the same sense, the Utsav became a social signaling, a social communication to the masses, okay, through this celebration. So that was one purpose. Now, social signaling for what? Not just for the pure material prosperity, that was a big part of it, because it could be the time for sowing the seeds of a different season, harvesting, whatnot, but something beyond that, okay? If it's a commerce, yeah, now this is the time people went back to the business. For example, in the Shravani full moon in the western coast of India, you will see that's when the fishermen get back to the sea. Okay, it's a signal. It's a signal for them to start doing their fishing activities again. Now, the question comes, it's unnecessarily debated, I would say, in our times, but the question comes, and I want to quickly address that, which is to say, I get this frequently asked question, I mean, all the time. Okay, so Uttarayan, Makar Sankranti, we celebrate it on the 14th of January, and sometime it comes on the 15th, and why does that happen? Originally, when this Makar Sankranta tradition started, it started on basically that the day coincided with the day of winter solstice, which is to say in the modern calendar, 21st of December. So what has happened? What has happened? Why did it arrive now at 14 January? And nothing wrong with that. From a celebration perspective, it's perfectly fine. I'm going to give you additional reasons for that. But before, when it really mattered in terms of as a social signaling for various activities, then we have to have that day correct. So originally, it was indeed equivalent to the 21st December, whatever the time that was, the day of winter solstice. But what happens is that in astronomy, as much as things are cyclical and they come back to the same point, well, actually, they don't come back to the exactly same point. Now, sometimes the difference could be so small that we don't notice it for hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years. And then the time comes for a change. And then if we are not very open-minded, scientific, okay, if we don't have a knowledge of darshanas, if we don't have a knowledge of Indian astronomy, that the things can be changed, things must be changed with a druk pratyay, meaning what we see in the sky has to match with the panchang. And if we don't make that change, then some things may just continue the old-fashioned way. Sankranta has one of these things. That's why we do it on the 14th January. But as far as the word that we use, Makar Sankranta, is correct. Because somebody in the beginning, in the description, they said it, and they said it absolutely correct, which is to say that 14th January in our times is the day when sun enters the zone, in the astronomy zone of Makar Rashi or Capricorn zodiac. That is true. But how far ago this thing started? The reason I'm mentioning is because there is a lot of confusion as to should we do this now 21st December? Should we do it on 14 January? Well, we have to go back and see how do we make use of it. If it is right now a cultural celebration, then frankly, I don't see any issue why we should not continue with 14th or 15th January, unless we start using it for some other meaningful purposes in the sense of agriculture and whatnot. Okay, I don't know whether we use that. Now, the traditional celebration is not always to be confused with the historical event. So I will give you that example. So now the beauty is the very fact we did not make this change with the change in the point of winter solstice is actually a good thing. And I'll tell you how. Because of that, we can actually pinpointedly calculate, astronomically we can calculate when this tradition of a Makar Sankranti would have begun. Now, before I say that, let me tell you that these 4 cardinal points and some utsav associated with those 4 cardinal points, and actually many other points, existed in India for a very long time. Okay, but just like I said, we have to make a correction by seeing what's happening in the sky with our celebration. So somebody was smart enough to make that correction, and I'm going to tell you how long ago was that. So we can actually calculate, and I'm going to do the calculation in front of you. So between 21st of December and 14th or 15th of January, we have got approximately 24, 25 days. Let's take that as a 25 days. And what happens in the Indian calendar or lunisolar calendar, that is not understood in the Gregorian calendar, by the way, because Gregorian calendar is purely tropical calendar. It doesn't look at the background stars like a Makar Rashi. It does not look at. So 25 days, and what astronomy tells us, the Indian astronomy tells us, that for a shift of 1 day with respect to any cardinal point, like in this case, winter solstice, Uttarayan, it takes about 72 years. So we are going to do a simple math. We are going to take 72 as a 70, and the gap between 21st December to 14 January as 25. Okay, so if you multiply 25 times 70 years, 25 days shift, 70 years for 1 day shift, we get approximately 1750. So that's what, between 1700 1800 years ago. That is when this particular tradition of Sankranti began. But just to make it clear, the celebration of a winter solstice went back in antiquity, way, way back. Okay. In fact, that's true for all cardinal points, including the beginning of a season, such as a Vasanta Rutu or Sharad Rutu. That's why we have one Navratri in the Vasanta Rutu, one Navratri in the Sharad Rutu. Okay. So that's the beauty of it. Now, why is this confusion happens? Because of a deep antiquity of Indian civilization. That is not a problem for some of the newer civilizations, you can say, or civilizations in the making, trying to still figure out what should be their moral code and so on. They don't have this problem because most of them are less than 2000 years old, right? But the confusion with some of the celebrations in the Indian tradition is because of its deep antiquity. Now, what the beauty of Indian Utsav is this. You take Makar Sankranta and what happened, you take Vijayadashmi and why are we celebrating, or Diwali, why are we celebrating? And if you go around India or a greater India, you will find multiple different traditions, different historical events associated with that same day. For example, Vijayadashmi. It's celebrated for 10 different reasons. Diwali is celebrated for 10 different reasons. And that is the smartness and the pragmatism of our ancestors. They knew that there are so many things to celebrate. Okay. And if we start celebrating every single event, every single time that happened, we would, every day would be a utsav, which is a great idea, but we wouldn't have a time to work. Okay. So many times they coupled many events with one particular thing. And therefore, I'm saying the traditional celebration is not always to be confused with a historical event. But let's come to Makar Sankranti. I already said this was the tradition that began around 1700, 1800 years ago, which is the time when the day of winter solstice, the Uttarayan, exactly match when sun entered the area of Makara Rashi. But what is it that shifted? There is a phenomenon called precession of equinoxes, and I'm not going to a technical details, but essentially the Earth's axis, it goes and makes a complete circle. I'm not talking about the Earth rotating around itself or around the sun. I'm talking about the Earth's axis and its own rotation, like a top, like a gyratory motion, and it takes 26,000 years. Okay, and if you do the math of that 360-degree, 1 degree changes every 72 years, you will get that 26,000 number. All right. So that's why we have a Makar Sankranti celebration. It's good that we didn't change. We can go back and track when exactly it began. Okay. That's something nice. But let me take you another Utsava celebration. That is the first day of the year. Granted, in India, that is done in many different ways. Different places might have slightly different start point. But I will take one that is, at least I know, is celebrated in the 3 states. So, and for no particular reason, the only particular reason is I know a little bit more about that, which is the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada, the first day of the Indian year in most of the Indian calendars. In Maharashtra, it is called Gudi Padwa. In Karnataka, it's called Ugadi, and I think in Hyderabad or Andhra Pradesh also it's called Ugadi. And please forgive me if I'm not saying the names correct for each state. It might have been also celebrated the same way in many other parts of India, so forgive my ignorance of it. But I want to talk something about that Gudi Padwa, just to give you a evidence or a clue that all these cardinal points are celebrated for a long, long time. Now, how long time? Well, those of you who are familiar with my research work, you do know. And if those of you are not, then it's a time to get to YouTube, type Nilesh Oak and watch videos. You can have binge watching. Okay. I don't know how many videos, possibly 400 plus videos now, and many more would be coming. Or you can read my 3 books, or you can read my 500 plus blogs, and so on. But the point is, essentially, I started working some 25 years ago on the dating of the Mahabharata. It started with one observation. I extracted all astronomy observations, every single astronomy descriptions from the Mahabharata text, that 125,000 verses. From that, extracted down to 300 plus. Impressive, eh? 300 plus astronomy pieces of evidence. And when you put them together, like solving a crossword puzzle or a jigsaw puzzle or solving the Rubik's Cube, all that evidence takes us towards one specific date and no other. Okay, that's 5561 BCE. Now, I know you would be familiar of other dates and other people would be making those claims, and that's a good thing, because Indian tradition is of having that vada not in the sense of Vitanda vada, but vade jayate tattvabodho. Even in science, it says if there is just only one theory, be scared. You have to have a multiple theories, because all of them, a synthesis of them, leads to a better improvement, growth of our knowledge, and so on. So I figured out the Mahabharata war happened 5561 BC, for simplicity, more than 7,500 years ago. Then I did the same thing to Ramayana. I extracted all astronomy descriptions from the Valmiki Ramayana, they, guess what? I was surprised myself. They amounted to more than what I found in Mahabharata. They amounted to close to 600 astronomy references. Again, solving them in a scientific fashion, empirical fashion, objective testing, like jigsaw puzzle, solving this crossword puzzle, Rubik's Cube. It took me to a very specific year and no other, 12,209 BCE for the Ram Ravan Yuddha. Now we celebrate that the Ravana's killing on, say, Vijayadashmi. The point I want to make it is actually historically did not happen on a Vijayadashmi, but that should not be a problem for us for the celebration on a Vijayadashmi. We have to accumulate all these celebrations to one few specific days. Okay. Now, what is the connection of Gudi Padwa? Now, for many others who may not be doing it, they don't know. But say if Maharashtrians do it, then they know, okay, it's our festival. I don't know when it started. Well, I'm going to tell you at least how far back it was still celebrated. Guess what? It was celebrated 7,500 years ago in the Mahabharata. During the Mahabharata times, and you can see the beautiful descriptions in the Mahabharata text, right from how to bring the bamboo stick, how to clean it up, and how to put it vertically. And that is the day of a Samvatsar, the ending of a Samvatsar and beginning of a Samvatsar, how to do the puja. Okay, it takes about the bamboo stick and everything is there. So it existed 7,500 years ago, but it was not called Gudi Padwa. At that time, it was considered, it was called a Brahmotsav, and of course, a Samvatsara Utsav, okay? The celebration of a Samvatsar, which is exactly how we do it today as a Gudi Padwa, Ugadi, or so on. But is that the antiquity of a Gudi Padwa? No, not really. If we go back to the Ramayana times, which is going back more than 14,000 years ago, you find again this celebration of a Gudi Padwa. And as you would have guessed, it was not called Gudi Padwa. At that time, it was called Indra Dwaja Utsav. Indra Dwaja Utsav. Dwaj is that flag, okay? And so many descriptions come, and it was such a common knowledge that people were using, and in this case, Valmiki, sage Valmiki was using as a simple metaphor. For example, when Bharat and Shatrughna come back to Ayodhya, when they hear Dashratha is gone, and they feel very sad, they also realize Ram and Lakshmana are also gone, and they just fall to the ground. And Valmiki describes this as they fell to the ground like the flag of Indra, the Indra Dwaj is let fall on the Ashwin full moon. I want you to pay attention to that. Ashwin full moon. And so it appears that there was a tradition, just like we do the Ganesh Visarjan, there was a tradition that this particular flag post, like the Gudi, is to let it fall. Okay, that was the tradition 14,000 years ago. It was called Indra Dwaj. The point is that same tradition has survived for last 14,000 years ago. And we have no reason to believe that it did not exist before. When Rama kills Wali and Wali falls down, again, the description is given as the Wali fell down like the flag of Indra falls on the full moon of Ashwin. But if you're noticing something, I said full moon of Ashwin and not the month of Chaitra. Do you know why? Because again, that goes back to the exactly same reason why the Makar Sankranta day has shifted by 25 days. In our times, the month of Ashwin, now when it comes at the end of Sharad Rutu and the beginning of a Hemanta Rutu actually, because of that precession, the Earth's axis that I talked about, and our Vasanta Rutu is in the Chaitra month. But if you go back to Ramayana times, what you will find is very interesting. Actually, the month of Ashwin, the lunar month of Ashwin, occurred during the Vasanta Rutu, the spring season. And guess what? If that's going to happen, what is going to happen to the month of Chaitra? Well, Chaitra occurred during the Sharad season. And you can read Valmiki Ramayana. If there is any one thing I can achieve out of this, that I get some of you to go back to Valmiki Ramayana and read original Valmiki Ramayana with translation, of course, then I have done my job. Which is to say, the Chaitra month occurred during the Sharad season during Ramayana times because of that precession going back 14,000 years ago. And you can see those descriptions into the Valmiki Ramayana. So because of that, some things do change. Now, what did we do with Ramanavami? Why do we celebrate that? I'll come back to that in a minute. Exactly the same reason why we read the biographies, autobiographies of great people. Okay, so Ramayana is a Niti Vichar, and a perfect education is through Valmiki Ramayana. If you look at Mahabharata, it's a Karma Yoga Vichar. Okay, Mahabharata has everything, But again, you will find time and time again the emphasis is on the karma. When Arjuna wants to go take sannyas, Krishna comes back and says, no, you have to fight. That is your swadharma, that is your swakarma. So emphasis is on the karma in case of Mahabharata. So we are reading this biographical, in a way, the history, our historical text, itihasa, to this also called Arsha Kavya, to get inspiration, okay, get charged and face the present and face the future. So what you see is that when we celebrate these events, festivals, it is, of course, we should celebrate in the contemporary fashion in whatever way it makes sense. But it is also a time for contemplation, just like a day of Rama's birth is, or day of Krishna's birth is, or Vijayadashmi is, to look at our civilization, take inspiration from it, and then try to use it for our current circumstances and future. If you go to Garga Samhita, now, Garga Samhita has preserved this reference to Gudi Padwa in different fashion, which is to say it has preserved very much the way we do Gudi Padwa, but it has also preserved the possible time that it remembered, and that again goes back to the Ashwin month. And therefore, you will see, if some of you have been to Nepal, they actually do Indra Dwaj festival. They call it Indra Jatra. Okay, and it is done right now at the junction of Bhadrapad and Ashwin. So in a way, they are preserving the 14,000-year-old tradition with that lunar month, okay, but not the season, because season has shifted through 6 months, okay. All right, quickly, why do we celebrate? I just briefly mentioned. But one thing is, as a human, as a humanity, individuals, we like celebrations. We like the party, okay, have a blast. That's what I refer to. Or feel that we are alive, feel that there is excitement, feel that there is optimism, and utsavas do that, okay. And so what happens if we don't celebrate this festival, if we don't tell the right sense of these festivals to the next generation? Guess what? They are human beings too. We have given birth to human beings, and they will find their own festival, and nothing wrong with it. But why bother when we have so many? Okay, so that is the reason we need to understand what our festivals are, go back behind them, try to understand the principle why they are so. One last point: we as an individual, as a prakriti, again going back to mano vak kaya sanyama, so we want that balance of the mind, intellect, and the body. We also want the balance in our individual life, and of course the social life, of sattva, raja, and tama. Now, many times when we think of a raja, sattva, raja, tama, we think tamas is bad. Well, directionally, that's correct. We also think rajas is also bad, and that should be shunned, that should be stopped, and only come to sattva. Directionally, that is correct, but not 100% correct. Okay, in a way, as long as we have the body and as long as we have the mind, actually we need a perfect balance of this. You see that in the Ayurveda also, the kapha, vata, pitta. Okay, it's not like kapha is good or kapha is bad, or vata is good or vata is bad. We need a proper balance. Same thing with sattva, rajatama. I'll quickly mention one Maharashtrian tradition. I don't know what happens in the rest of the world, rest of the other parts of India. But before the Chaturmas begins, and usually it begins on the Ashadi Ekadashi, right, sometime around that June, July timeframe. And just before that, which means many people who take a vrata for the next 4 months, that Chaturmas, that's what refers to the rainy season, from Ashad, Shravan, Bhadrapad, what is that? Am I saying it right? Ashad, Shravan, Bhadrapad, Kartik, correct, the 4 months until Kartik Ekadashi. Just before the Ekadashi begins in Ashada, on the Nomi, it's in Maharashtra, it is called Kande Nomi, referring to the onions, okay? And so now the next 4 months, no one is going to eat onions. Well, there is a spiritual reason that people give, and that's correct. But also there is a Ayurveda reason, okay? It's a time of rainy season. And therefore, it's a social signaling. This is not a good time for onion eating, okay? But just before that, our internal desires, our cravings, they are satisfied on this Kande Nomi. So people will make these pakodas out of onions and so on. My point is, nothing is basically avoided in our ancient tradition or our current modern Hindu tradition. Somebody used that word, and I forgot now that how it is a refreshing tradition. In fact, Yaskacharya, the Niruktakar, defines our whole Sanatan tradition as Sanatano Nitya Nutana. In fact, the tradition, that particular tradition, which is capable, which is willing, and which is enthusiastic about refreshing itself in the context of time, place, and circumstances. Okay, so sattva, raja, tama, yes, directionally in a spiritual way, we understand the sattva is what we need to increase, but we don't deny the place of a rajas or place of a tamas. And therefore, if you look at the celebrations, and this is my last statement, you will see there is a Holi for certain purposes. You know, people have certain desires of shouting. Yeah, you can do that on a Holi. Ranga Panchami, okay, you want to play with water and colors, do that. There is a Ganesh Visarjan, okay, for like intellect, you know, get your replenishment for intellect. There is a Diwali for food, different types of foods and crackers and so on. Gudi Padwa and also the Makar Sankranti, and, you know, taking that bitter leaves, neem leaves, okay, so that we are ready for facing the Vasanta and a Grishma. We have a Ramanavami and Krishna Navami to give us this biographical, okay, some great ideals in front of us that we can learn from their biographies. What a hard life they have, but what a blast they also had. Okay, and then Navratra. Okay, it's times for a romance, it's times for a worship, it's time for a dance, and so on. And it's okay to stay awake late through the night. Okay, so there is a time for that, and of course the Vijayadashmi. So with that, thank you again for inviting me. And if there are any questions, I would be very happy to respond to them, or any objections too, by the way. Namaskar. So,
Dhanyawad. Yes, Dhanyawad Nilesh. I think everybody is just stunned right now learning about how deep our antiquity is and our tradition is. People are still probably collecting thoughts about some questions. Sriranji, do you have any questions that you want to ask Nilesh?
Yeah, actually, I was looking at the chat, but there are no questions on the chat posted. But my question, I think, and this has been asked multiple times, probably to Nilesh, is why don't we go back to 21st December then for Sankrant? I mean, yes, and I understand the reason that helped us to find out how old this tradition is, but shouldn't we go back to 21st December to be current with the times?
Okay, great questions, Sri Rangaji. That is correct. In our calendar, we have made periodic corrections. Okay, so for example, the Makar Sankranta tradition that we see 1800 years ago was actually a correction. So someone said, hey, it's a time to, they might be calling by some different name before, maybe the Kumbha Sankranti. Okay, but now it's a time to make a Makar Sankranti. So yes, it has to happen. The interesting challenge that we face right now, and I'm sure those challenges were there in the past. In fact, I can tell you the evidence of the past challenges. I'll just mention briefly a couple. But anytime you try to make a change, now suddenly there is this fight that begins with the traditionalist versus the one who want to make a transformation. And that we have seen through the tradition. For example, going back to Vishwamitra's time, and is possibly referring to 13,000 BC or possibly 20,000 BC, that Vishwamitra was saying it's a time for making a correction to the calendar, and no one was listening to him. So he got angry, if you have heard this story, and he started a Pratisrushti. That's how the description comes in the Mahabharata. That's how the description comes in Ramayana, and that's how the description comes in few other places. He started Pratisrushti with a Shravana Nakshatra as the first nakshatra. And I have written about it. But my point is, there is always that resistance that is faced from the certain parts of society, and therefore that makes it difficult. But quickly to answer your question, yes, actually to keep up with what we see in the sky and what is its original intent, if possible, we should change it to equivalent to 21st December.
So corollary to that question, actually, I have one more question. I mean, this Sankranti actually is celebrated as Pongal in various South Indian states, and they are really solar calendar, if I am correct, if I understand it correctly. And so we keep Sankranti on this date to kind of match with that same time. How is those are related then? I mean.
Okay, now great question again. In fact, the very fact we celebrate the Makar Sankranti on the 14th or 15th January, that is a verification that we are, at least for that purpose, we are using a solar calendar, because that is still the day. I mean, in our times, 14th or 15th is the day when sun enters the Makar Sankranta. I mean, in the zone of the Makar. The challenge is its original purpose, which was the day of Uttarayan, winter solstice, has shifted. But see, we always have a choice, right? For example, Ram, as I said, was born during the Sharad season. But we don't do Ramanavami celebration in the Sharad season. We don't keep up with the season. Rather, we kept up with the lunar month and a tithi, which is a Chaitra Shukla Navami. And that is always going to be a challenge. Now, the date that I did by using the Julian calendar, because people these days understand the Gregorian and Julian calendar, is 29th November 12,240 BCE. That is the day Rama's birth. Now the thing comes, okay, should we celebrate per season in the Sharad season? Should we celebrate per the Gregorian or Julian calendar on 29th November? And should we celebrate on the Chaitra Shukla Navami? Well, we have to pick one unless we want to do 3 celebrations and 3 holidays, right? So these are some practical considerations, and that's why we continued with Chaitra Shukla Navami. Nothing wrong with that. And therefore I said, unless we are using it for a functional purpose, if we are just doing as a historical celebration or a cultural celebration, I am not such a, I don't have a very strong position one way or the other, whether it should be done to 21st December or 14th of January. So we as a whole Dharma civilization have to decide what we want to, why do we do it, and what we want to get out of it.
Dhanyawad. Dilesh, there is a question from Vaibhavji. So, Shriramji, I'll just read it. Can you explain why the Hindu month start of South Indians and Maharashtrians do not match? Why in the same Hundi region, or Hindu region, probably that was the meaning, there is no agreement on when should a Hindu month should start after scrolling down.
After Chaitra, maybe, he means?
Yeah.
I'll just ask on audio here. Mitraji, Namaskar. I wanted to ask why there is a disagreement between the different states on when should the Hindu month start, on after Purnima or after Amavasya?
Okay. Yeah, so that is another one, by the way. You know, so should we start on a full moon? Should we start on Amavasya is one difference. You can say directionally north versus south. That's kind of the broad difference you will see. In the north region, you will find Purnimanta calendar, which is Purnima to Purnima is a one lunar month. In the other parts, most of the south, including Maharashtra and whatnot, it's the Amanta to Amanta. The Indian government, in a way, follows Amanta to Amanta, Amavasya to Amavasya. Okay, that is the calendar. Why does that difference? The difference occurred at some point because of this precession. Okay, because of this precession. So say you start at some point, and 70 times 15, whatever that number is, 1,000 years approximately, I think, whatever that time goes by, and somebody says, you know what, this is not becoming the good starting point. So they change the calendar, and then they stuck with it. But to answer your question, one of the reasons why we have these different calendars, by the way, this is not the only difference. Then you have like if you go to Kerala, that is another day they do it. If you go to Punjab, they do it on another day. They have fixed it like a 14th of April, you know, that is the Baisakhi, and they have done this. Everyone is trying to fix it in a certain fashion. But as much as we find it frustrating, also remember, one of the 3 foundations of our civilization is Vichar Swatantra, okay, the freedom of thought. Now that comes in different shades, and that sometimes becomes challenging, and sometimes it is our strength, just like the foundation of a Niti Dharma, but here the freedom of thought. So people did for their own purpose. They also did it sometime because of the agriculture cycles are slightly different for different parts of India. And that was the original purpose of this calendar. So that is a quick or short or a long answer.
Okay, so unless there are other questions, I would like to have a follow-up question on that one. Do you know in your research, why did Lokmanya Tilak thought of having his own Panchanga?
Okay, great question. Why Lokmanya Tilak thought of having his own Panchanga? For a same reason. So just like why Vishwamitra started his own Panchanga. In fact, when Vishwamitra started Pratisrushti, many people think he just created another universe. No, this is a metaphor. Okay, it's a metaphor for creating another Panchanga system. In fact, why Lokmanya Tilak? I have started one. Do you know about it? If you are on the Twitter, okay, go to Twitter @Date Panchang. What I did is, For example, right now we have a Vikram Samvat that will answer your question. Vikram Samvat we have a Shalivahan Samvat. Then we use the Gregorian calendar. Some people use Saptarshi calendar. Now it is almost lost, but it existed in our times. Some people use something called Yudhishthira Shaka, and there are many Shaka. And nothing wrong with them as long as they serve the purpose. But if we have to find one common ground, just to bring it together and do this, if assuming it is possible, then I thought, why not take something like a Mahabharata or a Ramayana? And the closest one is a Mahabharata. So I started something called Mahabharata Samvat. Okay, some people said call it Nilesh Samvat, like a Lokmanya Tilak Panchang. No, I didn't want to go with my name on this one. But the point is, because when you see something in the sky not matching with your current calendar, or some of the great aspects of calendar being lost. So the reason Lokmanya Tilak started was something like that. And the reason why I started is also similar, which is to say, India, actually, ancient Indian tradition had a perfectly solar calendar. And is there in the Taittiriya Samhita, you will find in many Samhitas. The months are Madhu, Madhava, and these are solar months. But that is completely lost. And that is not the only reason, but that is one of the reasons that I wanted to reestablish those. And I needed some good Panchanga maker. Finally, I found it, one of the longest tradition, if not the longest tradition of living Panchanga Karta. That is the Date family from Solapur. It's just a coincidence they are from Maharashtra. In fact, their Panchanga are referred by everyone around India, including all the state governments and the national government. So with that, we started this. And we introduce, it is on a Twitter right now. We are going in the process of building an app where everyone can have this app. Everyone can find their muhurta. Everyone can find the tithi and nakshatra and everything for their local location using that app. So that's the direction we are going. But to quickly answer, Tilak also saw something that just like this shift of Makar Sankranti, something like that. And he wanted to make that correction. And that's why he wanted to start his own calendar.
Thank you.
Prasanna ji has a question. Prasanna ji, please go ahead.
Namaste, Nilesh ji. Dhanyavad. Very nice. Lot of things to learn. My quick question is, it's a little global warming. So, is there any references of global warming in Indian astronomy or history? Is this something again repeating? Can you share some knowledge about it?
Great question, Prasanna ji. And you gave me an opportunity to tell you how old is Indian civilization. I had forgotten. I didn't go beyond 14,000 years. Okay, so that will tell me. Yes, we have references to cold time periods. We have references to famines. We have references to hot periods. We have references to volcanic eruptions like ash and fire falling from the sky. If you go to Mahabharata, Markandeya, Vanaparva, Markandeya Rishi is telling to Yudhishthir and whatnot, something that happened in the past. It is our guess. It could be Toba explosion of 72,000 years ago. I mean, it can be anything, but just something that we can really pinpoint. There is a narration of King Brihadrath. This is from Maitrayani Upanishad. And this is for Ikshvaku dynasty king long before Rama. In fact, his name doesn't come into any of the genealogies. And some of the other astronomy references from Maitrayani Upanishad, but specifically his geological observations. Do you know what he's talking? He's talking of oceans drying out. He's talking of oceans receding. And therefore, we need these markers of a Ramayana, and then we need a markers of Mandhata. And when we go back, this story of a Brihadrath, where he's saying the pole stars are moving. Now, pole stars are always moving. But he's saying because one of the bright pole star has moved and no longer a pole star, that takes us to 38,000 BC. And the time of Brihadrath that he's referring to is 34,500 BCE, with all the 3 or 4 different astronomy references, 2 or 3 geographical phenomenon like oceans regressing and so on, which is the beginning of the last glacial maximum. That is around 34,500 BCE. And the shifting of the bright pole star, which is the Vega and Canopus, or Agastya and Brahmarashi, and they are moving away from being a pole stars. So yeah, that 38,000, and that comes in Maitrayani Upanishad, but you can also verify that from the Surya Siddhanta measurements of Canopus.
Dhanyavad, Nilesh ji.
Thank you.
We are almost actually at the 11:30 mark.
Perfect.
So I think there are a couple more questions. I don't want to disappoint others. So quickly, if we can answer these questions.
Okay.
So Meghnad Sahab, astrophysicist, headed Calendar Reform Committee for Hindu National Calendar. What are your thoughts on it?
Okay, good one. Who asked that question? I mean, that's a great question.
Swapnil ji.
Swapnil ji, okay, great question. So yes, there was an attempt after 1947, around 50s, early 50s. The Meghnad Saha committee tried to do this. Again, what Sri Rangaji asked, that was the same challenge, trying to get the whole India together on one calendar. In a way, it didn't happen. Actually, in some sense, it did happen, because the calendar that he built with the team, it is now legislated. And there is one, I'm trying to think of a name so that I don't say the wrong name, but Sri Maratheji, he's based in Aurangabad, and he is trying to, you can say, rejuvenate or promote that calendar. You can write a check in the Indian banks using that Rashtriya calendar, okay, and the banks has to accept it. In fact, he does that as an experiment. He's 73 plus year old, and that's what he does, and then the bank clerks are like surprised. He said, well, find out your manual, you should accept it. The challenge, the problem with, there is a problem with, I mean, it was a great effort. There are a lot of problems with that calendar, but I'll just mention one big one. What they did is, instead of selecting different names for the solar months, they chose the same 12 months, like Chaitra, Vaishak, Jeshta, Ashad, as the solar months, and also the lunar months. And so now it creates a more confusion. So for example, they will say, okay, the first day of the new year, that is the Chaitra 1, on a certain day, and immediately we will say, well, that should be the day of a Gudi Padwa or Ugadi. And they say, no, that's not the day of Ugadi, because this Chaitra is according to the solar calendar. So I'm saying it was a good attempt. My quick answer is, what the Date Panchang family and what I have built is actually takes care of those problems. That's not to say that we can solve the whole India's deviation problems. Some people have to agree. Just one thing. In fact, one of the pragmatic decision we made is to take the Vikram Samvat and also start it from the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada as opposed to Kartik Shukla Pratipada. And that also gave me and Date family big hit from, like I say, people from Gujarat, because they start in the Kartik. So if we want all India on one calendar, so we will have to make some pragmatic changes. So that's the answer.
Dhanyawad, Nilesh. So I think we should end this session now.
Sure.
With Shailendra ji, if you would like to give the...
Mandar ji, can I ask one question, please?
Yogesh ji, we are out.